Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with the Market Monday recap, where we recap the popular Market Monday that I do over at my main channel, Rogue Deck Builder. It's more of a lengthy version over there. Most of the videos end up being about 20 to 40 minutes long, more rambly of a topic, and this is the more condensed TLDR version of the Market Mondays, where I actually give 10 picks of cards you should either buy or sell with the given topic with the Market Monday. So this week we talked about timing, and specifically the timing is now to sell a bunch of standard cards. I gave some reasonings to back it up, some of the data, historical data with new sets and rotated sets, or after rotation, the sets that survived, they tend to spike up in value. And we looked at Aether Volt, we looked at Kaladesh, we looked at Hour of Devastation, etc., and as well as new sets when they first come out, like Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan. And they tend to have that big bump to about week number 2 or number 3. So we're in week number 2/3, depending on where you consider us. There isn't a big pro tour to showcase these cards, so I think that the main gains of these cards are done with, and we're going to start to see the prices level off and start to go down as the meta is started to be established as well, and people in general have picked up their standard decks. All right, so the first card that I am going to pick that is a definite sell right now is Ghalta Primal Hunger. Now this is because of 2 reasons. Supply, supply, supply. You have to know if a card is in any sort of product outside of its booster box or its set printing. And Ghalta is getting double dipped, double slammed here as a reprint. And the first we need to look at is over here at what we call the Spellslinger deck. In fact, Ghalta is the only reason to buy a Spellslinger deck. Everything else in the deck is pretty much bulk. In fact, the next most expensive card is a common called Silverbeak Griffin. So Ghalta is going to be the entire price of this deck. I believe these sell for, they're very cheap. I think they're only about $10 is the MSRP for these. These are going to be at your Walmarts and Targets. And I think that stores can pick them up for $5 to $6 a piece. And if they have a $9 Ghalta in them, of course, stores are just going to do that. They're just going to buy the box set, open up the Ghalta, trash the other cards, do whatever they do with bulk, and sell the Ghalta for a profit. So right then and there, Ghalta can't survive the $9 price tag with the Spellslinger deck coming out. And to make matters worse, we also have the Game Night deck that is coming out, which also contains a Ghalta as well as a Gigantosaurus in the green deck. So Ghalta is the most expensive card, I believe, in this Game Night deck as well, especially for green. You can look through this list too to find other cards that you should be selling. In fact, the next one will be on this list of cards you should get out of. So for that reason, I think that even Stompy too. Stompy's kind of on the downturn. I mean, the Stompy deck is very easy to run. It has high payoff right now. You can still go Steel Leaf Champion into Ghalta very easily on turn 4, turn 5, especially with the Ferox in the mix. And that is very attractive for Ghalta. So I think that if this wasn't the case, maybe you could look at Ghalta holding a price tag around the $7 mark. I think it's going down anyways, just because a rare has a hard time hitting above the $5 mark in today's day and age. And eventually these things are going to settle off. Even Rivals of Ixalan is a very profitable set to open at the moment. And I think the mass box openers are going to have a kind of a revival here in the next couple of weeks and months with how profitable it is to open up standard sets. One of the big topics we did talk about in the Market Monday. So Ghalta is my number 10. Actually, this is more like number 1 card you should sell, as it is having that double reprinting soon. I mean, those are going to be on the shelves very, very quickly. On to my number 2 card that you should sell. This is Cleansing Nova for the very same reason. It just spiked up in value it was up to $5 at one point. It's back down to $4.50. But again, it cannot hold its value if a one of is contained in this Game Nights. I can't remember what the MSRP for Game Nights is, but it's not a very expensive product. There's 5 decks in here. There's supposed to be more of these intro-level decks, and none of them, I don't think the entire box set is that expensive. So when it has a 5 decks and containing a Ghalta and a Cleansing Nova, well, you can do the math. It's something that people can break apart and make some profit on. So this is a list of cards you definitely should be memorizing. Even cards like Stitcher Supplier are getting a nice little supply injection from these box sets. So you can look at all of them. All of them contain good cards except for the red deck. The red deck is very lackluster as far as expensive cards or cards that hold any sort of value. Alrighty, so Cleansing Nova for that reason, even though it's starting to see a lot of play, I understand Azorius is going to come into the mix with the next set. Destroying artifacts and enchantments is relevant right now in the format. However, I think that Azorius will probably have a better board wipe, and it always does. Supreme Verdict 2.0 or just Supreme Verdict itself could easily be reprinted, and I think it might just push Cleansing Nova out of its slot. So that's one of the reasons I don't like it, and also because it is being printed in the Game Nights deck. So on to the next one, which is another thing that's going to be reprinted. So number 3 card you should be actively trying to get out of is the Legion Warboss. It's also not seeing the greatest amount of play. The red decks it's too slow. If that's a thing, it's too slow for red decks. You'd think that like a Goblin Rabble Master 2.0 would be perfect for a red deck, but most of the red decks are not playing the Legion Warboss. It's mainly Boros decks that are picking up the Legion Warboss. There's a couple mono reds that have in the sideboard, but most of the mono reds, they curve out at Chain Whirler as their 3-drop and are using the Experimental Frenzy or the Flames of the Fire, or I can't think of the 2 cards that you discard your hand, then draw 2 cards and it does damage. Anyway, Legion Warboss is just too slow for that deck, and I think for that reason, it's destined to go down. Something has to give from Guilds of Ravnica. I think everyone remembers Goblin Rabble Master and how it was a bulk rare that spiked up to $8, $9, $10 at one point, and our people don't want to miss out on that. Unfortunately, Legion Warboss is being reprinted in the guild kits, and the guild kits look very, very good. They're going to have those different lands in them that I think are going to be highly sought after. And again, something is going to have to give just with the value. Most of the guild kits have around $40 worth of value of cards in them right now. And a card that's being opened right now in draft season, as well as sealed and other limited seasons, this is the card that has the most to give away. I'm expecting this card to at least half in value within the next couple months. And now is the peak time and is the time to get out. All right, so now we're going to talk about cards that have spiked up in value, which I just don't think can hold for very long. The first one I want to talk about is Vivien Reid. Vivien Reid is currently, that is a foil. That's funny. The Vivien Reid is currently going for $22. I think $22 is a stretch for this card. I think this card is really good at the moment because the -3 being able to destroy flying creatures is huge in the format with Niv Mizets and Nicol Bolas's and Crackling Drakes and Enigma Drakes and Lyras and Doom Whisperers. It seems to be that almost every threat in Standard right now that is a must answer for green has flying. So Vivien's got going that for her. There is the mono green and the Golgari tend to actually like Vivien as a 2 of to 3 of, but that's the main problem. It's not like a Teferi or Karns in the past or Chandras where this was a strict 4 of, and so I think Vivien is the $22 with another $25 a mythic that might even go up more once Rakdos is printed, just because it makes the mana base a lot better. We're talking about Nicol Bolas here in one set. I mean, the Core 2019 is really what it does have going for it, though. It's the least open set out of all of these sets in Standard at the moment. And that's what I think you saw this main price tag go up. But this doesn't feel like a $22, $23 card to me. It feels somewhere in the middle, about a $15 to $18 card with how much it sees play. But this week was very, very good for Vivien. It saw a ton of play in anywhere from Stompy to Celestia tokens to Golgari and a lot of different lists, mix and match lists of those combinations. So again, very, very good card for keeping up with card advantage with the control decks and other mid-range decks. And the Destroying Flying is very, very relevant right now. That could change, though. That is something that I think this is more of a meta-dependent card. It didn't see any play at all on week 1 of the showing. So if the meta shifts again, this is a card that will go down in value. And for that reason, I'm getting rid of the Viviens I have. And I think that they're more of like I said, a $15 to $18 card rather than a $22, $23 card. The next one was one of my picks that I was speccing into, and now I think is the good time to get out. This is Lyra Dawnbringer. This is just because Dominaria, there's too much value in Dominaria now, both with History Benalia going up, with Teferi hitting $50, with Karn stabilized around 25, with a bunch of modern decks still utilizing Mox Amber. I just think that Dominaria has too much Mythic pack in it that people are going to be chasing cards out of it. And Lyra still does see the most play out of a creature as far as how many decks it can go into. A lot of the lists are starting to cut them out, though. This was a card that saw a lot of 4s, but I think on average now, Lyra's was like 2.3. rather than 3.3 or 3.5, or like I said, it's a lot of times a 1 of in a sideboard or a 2 of in a sideboard or 1 of in the main. I saw even an Angels list that well, wasn't really an Angels list, it was Aurelia and the Resplendent Angel that actually even cut Lyra, didn't even curve up to Lyra. So this is a card that can get knocked out of its spot when the next set comes out with Azorius. I doubt it, though. I think it's a pretty... I mean, usually Celestia has the big white creatures in it. I don't think that Azorius or Orzhov might have something in it, too. But this actually goes nicely with Orzhov, so keep your eye on how, if Orzhov does have, like, a lifelink mechanic or an angel mechanic to it, Lyra could go in that. But as of now, I think, you invested in Lyra, you got in at 13, got out at 24. Leave the last little bit for someone else. This could easily go up to 27, 28, 30. But in my opinion, it's too risky, and I'd rather move this on to other things that are more lucrative and more known, and we'll talk about that by the end of the video. So on to the next one. I know this is longer for a recap than usual. Jadelight Ranger, exact same thing. I think this card has proven itself. It's from Rivals of Ixalan. It is a $12.50 rare. It's the highest price it's ever been. This is something that competes with a lot of their cards in that slot. I think it's going to go slightly up more, probably around the $14, $15 mark. So maybe not quite sell right now. Maybe you can wait a little bit, but I think that this is still a good time to sell off. If you look at historical data, these things happen. This is usually where the curve starts to end out, is where its price hit the last time around. And this was like kind of both the ceilings of Jadelight Rangers around $12. We've seen cards like Vraska's Contempt and Search for Azcanta go a little bit higher, but usually they have at least some sort of modern playability, or at one point Vraska's Contempt was just the format defining card back in the last standard, because it gained the life and got rid of pesky creatures that either came back or needed to be taken care of. So I don't think Jadelight really fits that bill. But it's still a very, very good card. Most of these mid-range Golgari decks are going to want a 4 of. A lot of the Explore decks are getting very popular because they shut down the fast red decks and the Boros decks with the Wild Growth Walker and just clogging up the board. So again, this could go up a little bit more, but I wouldn't fault you by getting out right now. That's what I'm personally doing. The next one is a card that I also was all in. It looks like it has peaked out, which is History of Benalia. This isn't a good sign, being flatlined at 25. This is more Dominaria's fault than anything. I think the Dominaria has too much jam-packed in the Mythic slot, and people are just going to be opening those Dominaria packs, fishing for those History of Benalias, those Lyras, Karns, Mox Ambers, Teferis, and more supply is going to get injected into the standard. And like I said, something has to give. And Dominaria, I think History of Benalia had a pretty weak showing this week. It didn't even register on the top 10 non-creature spells, and it showed up on the top 10 non-creature spells, but didn't show up on the top 10 list this time. So you can see it, like the Boros, Angels, and Celestian tokens are still running it. A lot of these other decks, though, that had it in higher quantities did cut some History of Benalia to go other directions. Orzhov's still looking good with History of Benalia. However, I think that it's going to dip a little bit, and maybe sell now, get back into it before would be a better idea than possibly holding on to the History of Benalia. Now we're really getting into the cards that are from the current set of Guilds of Ravnica that I think are just too high and need to come down. And the first one being Doom Whisperer. Doom Whisperer also had kind of a lackluster week. There was a couple decks that had 4-ofs in them. It's still good in like Surveil decks, and that's still a casual favorite deck because it uses the vast majority of cards from Guilds of Ravnica. However, I think Doom Whisperer might not be in that slot of the 2, 3, 4 that it usually is, and is more relegated to the 1, 2, 3 copies in a deck. And 25 is a bit rich for a card because there's just so much value in the rares. We have cards like Risk Factor and Assassin's Trophy and Experimental Frenzy and the Steam Engine. There are so many rares in this set that are seeing modern play that are driving the price up of Guilds of Ravnica that it's insanely profitable to open boxes right now. And I don't think Doom Whisperer can hold its value for that reason. Still a great card. I think 25 is usually where a Mythic hits the high before it goes down. I mean, look at the Rekindling Phoenix. It's, still around 25. And I think that Rekindling Phoenix from a Rivals of Ixalan is a better pick than like a Doom Whisperer. It goes in a lot more different decks. Who knows if Orzhov's going to want this sort of card? Might, though. But anyway, that's where I stand with Doom Whisperer. I think it's a good time to get out. Then we have Ral Zarek. This is kind of low for a Planeswalker, $9.50. But if you look over a lot of the lists for Ral Zarek, there are 1 over a 2 of. And it seems to be pushed more and more to Teferi is strictly better than Ral. And I think that Ral, or that when we get Azorius Mana into the mix, I think it'll be so easy to play blue-red spell decks, Splash Teferi with perfect mana. And so Teferi will be your blue-red planeswalker, not Ral. And it's hard for me to justify playing Ral anytime over Teferi. Teferi is just so much better right now in Standard than Ral. And for that reason, I think that it's just going to get pushed out of its slot. And again, this isn't a card that usually is good in multiples like Teferi is. I've played a lot of this card and it just does seem... It's very lackluster in many matchups. And it's not like a build around me card like Teferi is. It's like jam it in a deck because I need some sort of card draw. And yeah, for that reason, I'm not a big fan of this card. I think it's going to continue to go down, even though it will see play. We've had cards like this. Think of the old Nissa, the green-blue Nissa. So it still saw a lot of play in energy decks, saw a lot of play, and it went all the way down to what? It was like $2.53 at one point. And that's a very good example because that was from Kaladesh, right? Or I don't know. It was from one of the first sets of its block, and it just couldn't hold its price tag, even though it did see some niche play. So that's what I feel about Ral. I don't think it can hold its $9.50 mark. Then we go on, of course, to the card that I think everyone should get rid of. This is Assassin's Trophy. Assassin's Trophy is stabilized. It actually had a little bit of a bump up again back to 21. It's still selling strong because it is played like crazy in Modern. I think that's the main demand right now is Modern, Modern, Modern. And Assassin's Trophy, I think, is the Fatal Push is a good example of what happens. Everyone goes all in thinking this is going to be a card that can hold its value, and it just slowly declines and declines and declines. 10 cents here, 10 cents here, 10 cents here. And then pretty soon, Assassin's Trophy is down to like 16, 17, where it probably should be, and everyone's wondering what happened. I think that even this could go down to 15, 14, just because of something has to give in this set. And in my opinion, it's going to be the Assassin's Trophies once all the Modern players fill up their wants for this card. And Standard, there isn't a lot of decks that actually do run it at the moment. I mean, I've seen some lists that run 4 of, but most are like a 2 of because it's just such a bad removal spell for early game to ramp up your opponent. Like Path to Exile is, well, strictly better in that sense to take care of any sort of threat that's a creature. And Assassin's Trophy, you can't reliably use it on a red card early by just ramping them a mana and then getting them towards something else. So even if this card does tend to increase in the meta, I think it will have its own undoing because then people they'll go a little bit more greedy on the mana based where they can have a higher curve. So we'll see like red decks maybe curve out at 5 because that you can get the use out of the Assassin's Trophy. And I don't know. For that reason, I don't think there will be enough standard pressure to hold this price, and it's going to be relegated to more of a modern card. And we've seen many things like Abrupt Decay, for example. That's another one that had mostly modern pressure back when it was printed last time around. And yeah, it's not quite it's not quite a Fatal Push, in my opinion, and we even saw Fatal Push go down. So that's kind of my list. I know this was kind of a long recap here, but those are the cards I get out of. You always need to stay on top of the game of reprints. This is a very good time to sell anyway because everything is just so overinflated with new decks. We don't have a Pro Tour coming up to showcase stuff. It comes later on, and so I think there's going to be a lot of settling and a lot of meta shifting right now. And so all these ones that we call tier 1 cards, and most of these are that I've looked at, I think these are going to be the highs for a while, and it's a good time to get out. So with a little bit of passing, what should you be getting into? Well, easy. The things that you should be getting into, and you can use this as an example, is come over here to prices and go over to like Dominaria, and you look at the cards that are have spiked up, have doubled up, that we know are going to be in the next set. Look at what happened in Clifftop Retreat. Was the $1.80? The Boros cards came out, went to $5. Okay, so I think we can safely say that is the safest investment ever to look at something like the Clifftop Retreat and say, oh, okay, let's look at Isolated Chapel. All right, it's going to do the exact same thing. This is going to be a $7 card when the Orzhov lands come to support Isolated Chapel. So I think so it'd be Isolated Chapel, especially because it's the enemy colored ones. They have a little less supply because they were in old school. They've been in Dominaria and Innistrad. The ally colored ones are Ixalan, but they've had a lot of other printings throughout the years and a lot of box sets even. So we have like Rootbound Crag, we have the Glacial Fortress, and the other one is going to be the green-blue Hinterland Harbor. So I like all of those. Hinterland Harbor especially because I think it's a nice fast land, or fast mana land for like Merfolk. And let's look at Hinterland Harbor real quickly here. So the Hinterland Harbor is currently going for $2.99. Yep. So this is a nice little double up as well. So I'd be seeking everything away from these cards that I named, all these high-priced mythics, throwing them in the Isolated Chapels, Hinterland Harbors, Rootbound Crags, and the Glacial Fortresses, and that's a safer bet to go. That's where I've gone on Card Sphere with it. I've been buying them up for quite some time, and we're looking good. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Kind of long recap, long for this series, but I hope it's been educational nonetheless. This is Kevin with the Rogue Market. You can go check out the entire Market Monday video, long form, over at Rogue Deck Builder, YouTube/Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.